Got Ben Goessling with me right now. I am Michael Rand from the Star Tribune. Ben, of course, covers the Vikings. Got some news on Tuesday, Ben.
Yep.
Long awaited, I guess, for some people. Extension for Kevin O'Connell, the head coach of the Vikings, puts to bed any kind of lingering drama there might have been. It kind of became a storyline over the last handful of games of the
Yeah.
season.
Yeah.
But multi-year extension, put it to bed. What do we know about this?
Well, it got done over the weekend, and it was something that, the Vikings have been pretty consistent about this. I talked with Mark Wilf in December about it, and he kind of echoed what they said before the season of wanting to get something done after the year. He reiterated that was the plan, to talk with Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah about contract extensions after the season. They get O'Connell's done. They waited a couple days to announce it. Obviously, the news cycle, both in the NFL and outside the NFL, has been crowded with other things the last few days, but it sounded like it got done over the weekend, announced on Tuesday. So really, by the end of the first week after the Vikings season, they have a deal in place. And I don't believe we will be waiting terribly long on Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah's deal either. I'm told there are discussions ongoing about an extension for him. So I would expect they will have something done in the not too distant future to kind of keep their coach and GM partnership in place for a while. I mean, that's been an important thing for them to have those two in lockstep for a long time. And Kevin O'Connell is done, and I would think that Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah is probably not terribly far from being done either.
They didn't release specific terms, as they generally don't.
Yeah.
That said, ballpark, I mean, you look, Ben Johnson just got $13 million from the Bears to leave the Lions.
Yeah.
Hot coaching commodity. But here's Kevin O'Connell, who's already been doing it for 3 years, 2 of them very successful. Length, if we're kind of ballpark guessing, you got to imagine length is probably an additional few years, you would think.
Yeah.
And the money is maybe somewhere around the Ben Johnson neighborhood. Does that sound about right?
Well, I don't know that I would assume Ben Johnson is a benchmark simply because this got done before Ben Johnson was announced as the head coach of the Bears. Now, part of your agent's job is to see what's going on around the league and understand the market. So I would bet it's probably in that range. It may not have been influenced directly by this. My understanding is this got done in such a way that Ben Johnson's deal was not going to be a trigger for this one. But yeah, I would think it's probably in that neighborhood. I mean, if that's the going rate now for coaches that are a hot commodity, which Kevin O'Connell was going to be if he came out of his deal in Minnesota. Make no mistake about that. He was going to be in high demand if he did not stay as the Vikings head coach, but this was a priority for them, a priority for him to stay here, get it done. So yes, I would think we're talking about at least another 3 years to get him back to kind of those 4 years left on his deal. That has kind of been the way the Vikings have gone about it in the past. I think when Mike Zimmer did his last extension, it was another 3 years on the deal to kind of make it so that he had 4 left under contract. Would not be surprised at all if that's what we're talking about here, just kind of knowing how the Vikings have gone about it. That kind of 4 years left on a deal, it seems to be about where they max things out. At least historically, that's been how they've gone about it. So I would think we're at least in that neighborhood again. And, the money, I'm sure, is a significant raise. I mean, Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah did not get extensions before this season, which was something that myself and a number of other beat writers asked about, because they did do Mike Zimmer's first extension at that juncture where it was 2 years left on his initial deal. The fact that the Vikings did not do that with Kevin O'Connell turned out to be a very good thing for Kevin O'Connell. Yeah. Obviously, he had a year that increased his price, increased his stock around the league. He is in the conversation for a lot of Coach of the Year type awards. Could be a finalist for the big one, the AP Coach of the Year award, which will be announced at NFL Honors. In fact, I would be shocked if he's not a finalist. I would think he's going to be one of the favorites for that award. So that kind of a year, the quarterback whisperer stuff that gets talked about with what he did with Sam Darnold, all of that played very well into increasing his price. And I'm sure he came out of this with a nice raise and is going to be set for a very, very long time as a result of what he did this year.
all of your reporting leading up to this was that this is what was going to happen, but
Yeah.
this still became a story. Just, you had some rumblings. You had, is O'Connell a little bit unhappy that this hasn't gotten
Yeah.
done yet? You had the whole thing, the Jake Glazer report a few weeks ago before the Detroit game, I believe it was.
Yep.
You almost humorously, you had Pro Football Talk on, I think, Tuesday morning saying,
Yep.
hey, nothing's been done yet. What's going on here? Like the 1,000th example of them publishing something, and then 10 seconds later, the other thing happens. But this felt like it was the logical conclusion to this. That said, people tend to kind of lose patience in scenarios
Yeah.
like this. So what do you think? Like ultimately, was this ever? There was never ever like any real risk of this, right? This was the logical conclusion all along, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was. I do know, and I've said this a little bit. There was, if we want to talk about tension, I think
Yeah.
there certainly was tension in the sense that it hadn't been talked about yet a lot. I mean, I think there was a lot of this. If we want, tension's probably not even the right word. It's probably uncertainty about.
Yeah.
Okay, hey, the team's winning. When are we going to discuss this? But the Wilfs were, I think, pretty consistent about this is going to be an after the season discussion. That's very much in the way that they work. There is a time for these things. There is a time to not do these things, and a lot of it was kind of directed around that premise. Now, could there have been more communication of, hey, this is where this is going to go, you got nothing to worry about? I suppose, yes, there could have been that. But I never got the sense that tension had a result of there was negotiations that hadn't gone well. I think it just had been there hadn't been many talks yet. And then you're kind of saying, all right, when are we going to get to the business side of this? And then when they do, season ends Monday. The team gets back Tuesday morning. O'Connell does his season-ending presser on Thursday, and deal is done by the weekend. So they did not wait very long to come around and get this done. And I think we've seen with the Wilfs over and over, they are not shy about spending money on the things that they view as being really important. And the first thing, when I got on the phone with Ziggy Wilf and Mark Wilf last month for my interview with them for my story on their 20 years of ownership, the first thing Ziggy Wilf started talking about was how confident they are that they have the right people in place. He started praising Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah almost immediately. So you knew right there was no doubt in their minds about how important these guys are to what they're trying to do, and this feeling of they've arrived at a leadership culture that in a structure that they think will last for a very long time. So I don't think from their perspective there was any uncertainty about doing this. I think if there was anything, it was probably just that lack of a sense of when it would happen.
Yeah.
But no, I think this was something that they wanted to get done. I think O'Connell, and he said it after the season, he wanted to be here. He said it in December that he wanted to be here. Was there interest from other teams? Yes. That is 100% accurate in terms of my understanding of things. Would other teams have been interested if he got out of his contract here? Yes. If he had gone into the final year of his deal, there would have been a lot of teams kind of with their antenna up and saying, hey, this guy is going to be here next year. We're going to have a chance to take a run at him. But he also knows what he has. I mean, the Vikings, you have an ownership group that spends money on just about everything in terms of the football product. The facility is one of the best in the NFL. The stadium is still one of the best in the NFL. You are basically guaranteeing that you're coaching Justin Jefferson for the rest of his prime while having as much control as you want over the quarterback situation, whether it's Sam Darnold, whether it's JJ McCarthy going forward. That is going to follow the path that Kevin O'Connell wants it to take. So I think when it came down to it too, it was going to be, this is a pretty good situation for him to be in as well. And I think he knew that. I don't think there was really anything once you get past, some of the posturing, some of the speculation that's aimed at, painting a certain picture in negotiations. I don't think there was any risk of this not getting done.
Final thing, Ben. I mean, this kind of sets up the rest of the offseason. This was obviously number one on the to-do list. We've still got, a few weeks left in the season with the conference title games, then the Super Bowl. Well, we get combine a few weeks after that, free agency, draft. It's going to come fast and furious. Like, how does this kind of this first domino kind of set them up for the other big decisions they have to make?
Well, I mean, it makes it easier to talk about a quarterback decision because you're
that's what I think
not
too.
anymore worrying about, is the coach going to have to make decisions based on his own job security? And I don't know that he would have approached that
Yeah.
the same way that we saw Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman do it in 2021.
Right.
And they certainly did.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no doubt
Yeah.
that was on their minds with a lot of the decisions they made, or probably a lot of the frustration with decisions like drafting Kellen Mond in the third round, where they passed on guys that, I mean, Mike Zimmer said it with Mark Craig in August about, you passed on guys I thought could help us and I thought could start. So that, I think, would have probably been a different calculation for O'Connell, simply because he's at a different phase of his career. He had, I think, a different picture in terms of what his employment status could have looked like beyond Minnesota. I think he would have had a lot stronger market. So I don't know how much he would have allowed that to factor into his decision making. But you don't want that to be anywhere near the conversation. You don't want JJ McCarthy wondering about, is my head coach that drafted me and developed me going to be here long term? So it takes any iota of that out of the equation and makes it a lot easier to kind of go about the quarterback development plan for both 2025 and beyond with a little more security. And I think that's just a better place to be making those types of decisions. That's going to be obviously a big decision they have to make, I think, by March 5th on the franchise tag, and then free agency starts March 12th. So you've got that. You've got, probably some coaching things here in terms of guys interviewing for other jobs, other places. But, we'll see if anything leads to anybody leaving and if there's any coaching changes that come as a result of that. But then, 25 free agents going into 2025. I mean, a lot of these one-year deal guys, you have to make decisions on and figure out what they want to do with all of this money. They have something like $75 million in cap space to spend, but only 38 guys under contract for the 2025 season. So there's a lot to figure out. But the first thing you needed to do was take care of the people making the decisions, who have outplayed or outcoached, outworked their contracts to this point. I mean, you have two 13-win seasons in the first 3 years. You're going to get rewarded for that. Kevin O'Connell did. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, I think, will soon. And then you kind of make the rest of the decisions knowing you have a pretty stable foundation to go from.
Great points, Ben. Appreciate your insights as always. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mike.